Hello, hello. This is Disgruntled Elk. We're going to be going through a replay of my top 32 finish in the Modern Challenge this past Saturday. List is pretty sweet. The one thing that we are trying is No-Lurrus, and to be fair, after playing a bunch with different iterations of the deck, I think you can probably, once you have 52 cards set up, you can kind of play whatever other 8 you want. So, here's what I'm talking about, right? So, we have the 20 lands, which I think 20 is the kind of bare minimum you can go with. I prefer probably 21, 22. You have your 8/0 drops, you have your Sentinels, your Aids, your Hammers, your 1 Shadow Spear, your 3 Drums. You can play more, but I think 3 is the minimum. And then you have your 8 2-drops, your Stoneforge Mystics, and your Paladins. And then you kind of have these 8 spots to play around with. I like some number of Giver of Runes. I play 3 of those. We play a Steel Shaper's Gift because it's fine, and I don't think you really want the 4th Giver. And then, since this is a Lurrus list, we are trying something fun. I do think Nihil Spellbomb, even in this list, is probably better than Soul Guide Lantern, because you do have the black mana, but could be wrong. Nettle Sentinel is very good in the deck. I will absolutely acknowledge, this is the reason if you're going to play a list without Lurrus of Hammertime, you're playing it for Nettlesist, because the card's very big, it's very beefy, it's very good. I like the extra land, and that makes the 4th Inkmoth Nexus, and Cauldron Complete, I've really liked this card in Legacy primarily. I really enjoy the card. I like it, so that's why I decided to play it. We'll see if it comes up, how good it would be, yada yada. Then the sideboard, I decided that I thought there might be Cascade, so we have the Drannith Magistrates, we have 3 Sanctifier and Vex, because it's good. It's a really good card. And then 1 Path to Exile, the 4 Thoughtseize, of course, and 1 Sword of Fire and Ice. This card's it's fine. If you are going to run this list again, I don't think you run the Sword of Fire and Ice. It's, I think, the thing I would fetch the least, but it's not a terrible card. It's just very medium in the deck. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and go through my recording of the I guess 7 rounds in the event, and I'll kind of give my commentary along the way, but I will see y'all in round 1. All right, so here we are with round 1. We're about to hop into it. Cool. So yeah, here we are. Looking at our hand, we have an Esper Sentinel, a Giver of Runes, and a Memnite and 2 Ornithopters and a Steel Shaper's Gift. Now, I was just kind of waking up still. Looking back, I don't think this was a particularly good keep. We don't really have a way. We have a way to find Hammer, but we don't have a way to equip it. We also only have 1 land. If one of these Ornithopters is an Urza's Saga, this is a very different keep. But yeah, I go ahead and keep the hand. So we get to our first turn, and it's pretty easy play. It's a consideration to play the Giver first instead of the Esper Sentinel, but it's whatever. We play the extra body because Memnite can attack, and we go from there. Opponent plays Flooded Strand, passes the turn. Another Memnite's not really what we want to see, but I guess it's better than an Ornithopter. Yeah, so we get in there for 2 damage, and we play out the Giver and the second Memnite, because, why not? Flooded Strand could be a bunch of decks. My gut says it's probably some blue-white control iteration. They play Snow Covered Island, fetch up Steam Vents with the Flooded Strand, and Unholy Heat, the Esper Sentinel, of course, and so it looks like it is the Murktide deck. That's very much my estimation at this point. Another no mana source, and I would have been happy with a Springleaf Drum as well, honestly. Any of the 23 mana sources left in the deck would have been good. We go ahead and get the Hammer. And in retrospect here, I'm also supposed to be attacking with the Giver of Runes, obviously, because I don't really care about protecting Memnites. It can't protect itself, and I'm just giving away a point of damage. What are we going to do? Protect this Ornithopter? No, I don't think that's particularly reasonable. There is a consideration for if they dash a Ragavan, but I think I'm okay throwing away an Ornithopter if that's the case anyway. Okay, opponent not doing anything. Draw their card off of the bauble. Once again, no mana source, which is kind of rough. So we've had 3 draw steps with no mana source. And once again, I think we're just supposed to kind of get in there. If they have Archmage Charm, they have Archmage Charm. And I'm just playing the Colossus Hammer here because I think we need to, since we only have 1 mana, we certainly need to use it each and every turn. Opponent has Another Unholy Heat kills the Giver. I respond by giving one of the Memnites Pro Red, because why not? YOLO Swaggins. They fetch up a Hallowed Fountain and Thought Scour themselves. So now I know they are Jeskai, which tells me, you know, watch out for Prismatic Ending. Not that we can do much about it anyway. It looks like, yep, they're ending the hammer. And we're obviously just hoping to, like, draw a land. But okay, we drew another 2-drop. And this was definitely a problem with the hand. The funny part is, like, if we had actually attacked with the Giver, they would have been at 7 or 6 here. So here we are. Yep, so they jam a giant Murktide, and unless we find a second land here, the game's basically over. Honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and skip to the end. But I don't think we draw another mana source the entire game. So while the hand was certainly not a correct keep, it also was kind of unreasonable to not draw any lands in the top, like 7 cards, 8 cards. But at least we can block with this Ornithopter. We have an Esper Sentinel, and this game's over. Yep, and just to confirm, in fact, no lands. You know, it is what it is. But yeah, moving to game 2. Okay, so in sideboarding, we go ahead and trim the Kaldra. We trim the 4 Ornithopters and 1 Memnite, as well as the Nihil Spellbomb, because we don't have a way to rebuy it. It's just not as exciting, because like their graveyard's great to nuke, but if you can only nuke it once, it's not really worth it without the Lurrus. We also cut the Steel Shaper's Gift. We brought in the 3 endings, the Path to Exile, 3 Sanctifiers, because a pro red creature is just like very good. And of course Sword of Fire and Ice, because it is pro almost everything in their deck. But yeah, that's how we sideboarded. Okay, so here we have our 7-card hand. Totally reasonable 7. We have Sigarda's Aid into Sanctifier into, yeah, it's like this hand's completely reasonable. Any Hammer, Saga, any of that is great. Play out the Courtyard, play out the Giver of Runes. It's probably fine because we have the double Sigarda's Aid. In retrospect, I think you just probably jam the Sigarda's Aid. Now, I guess if we find a Stoneforge Mystic, we can also protect it. Yeah, so I think it's borderline to play either way, but I like playing out the Giver for sure, because we don't care if they because we don't care if they block or they attack with like a Ragavan, because we will have Sanctifier and Memnite to block. Doesn't really matter. Yep, so they're going to go ahead and bolt the Giver of Runes, which sure, that's fine. Doesn't matter. I think they're just trying to get a 6 value here where they can skip the rest of their turn. Yeah. Play out the Memnite, pass the turn. Now we just need to find a hammer, and we're in pretty good shape, honestly. Okay, well, we found a hammer, so there we go. Let's do the thing. And this is great because even if they have a counterspell for the aid, we have the second aid to play as well, which is exactly what happens. So, all right, let's do it again. Let's go ahead and put a hammer on a pro red creature. Hope you have Prismatic Ending. Attack for 13, casual hammer things, and opponents at 3. This is kind of what we want. All right, Thought Scour themselves. Pick up any additional information? Not really. All right, so we get game 2, which is great to see. Now we're going to game 3. Obviously, we had quite the good draw there. Not unreasonable, but pretty good. I consider bringing in some number of Thought Seizes, but I end up deciding to make no changes because it played fine. There's a consideration for maybe another Memnite because we're on the draw against the Ragavan, and I think this hand is very medium, but this hand's much better, so we go ahead and keep it. We bottom a drum. But yeah, we have an aid and 2 hammers. So any 0 drop is excellent. Also, the Giver is not bad either because it can protect the Stoneforge Mystic. So we're pretty happy to play that out because we won't need the additional mana next turn. Plus, we can always play out Springleaf Drum and the Stoneforge Mystic. But okay, we have a second hammer, which you love to see. Yeah, so we go ahead, play out the Clearing, play out the Stoneforge Mystic, and I'm thinking hammer, but Nettle, Cyst, and Shadow Spear are also completely reasonable, as well as Sword of Fire and Ice. I think Sword of Fire and Ice is the pick here, and don't need to attack. Cool. Crack the fetch, grab the Steam Vents. Looks like they're going to kill my Giver. Yep, Giver down. Go ahead and give Pro White, simply because, they only have Hallowed Fountain left up. Pass it back to the opponent. All right, opponent. Is that? All right, third land, not bad. All right, does the aid resolve? Okay. And it's just one of those things where at this point, I think we just go for it. Like we even have the second hammer in case of a bolt or something. So it's just one of those things, you know. Let's do the thing. Equip. All right, that one resolved. Let's do it. Yep, equip. Boom. And the opponent has Path to Exile, which I haven't seen in those lists in a long time. Let me know in the comments if that is not the case and I'm just mistaken, but I have not seen Path to Exile in those lists since I don't know when. Since, you know, they have Prismatic Ending and Holy Heat and Bolt. But yeah, so, all right, we made them have it, and they certainly had it. So let's go ahead and see how the game plays out from here. We just need to hit, honestly, like a Paladin's obviously really good. We can start drawing off the Silent Clearings. But yeah, every threat in the deck's going to be good, especially if we get to stick this Hammer, but we'll see. So they Expressive Iteration, they exile Lightning Bolt, play the Island, and we go ahead and play out the Drum first because this allows the Esper Sentinel to tap for mana anyway, so we can flash in the sword off the Sagardazade. Yeah, but they have the counterspell, so it doesn't really matter anyway. And this is certainly a spot where Lurrus would be excellent to have, more so than Kaldra or Sophie or Nettlecyst. All right, they're dashing Ragavan, so things are not looking great at this point. Let's see what treasures they find. Got a Plains, which is fine. Don't really want that one. Another Expressive Iteration, pretty good. And they grabbed a Prismatic Ending, which I feel like they're probably just supposed to use on the Sagardazade here, because I don't know when Prismatic Ending is going to be better, especially considering they know my hand. But we'll have the dash resolve, of course. And yeah, go ahead and draw a card. Prismatic Ending, not exactly what we want to see here. Memnite, great. I think here I'm just supposed to cast this sword. I don't know why I wait. Yeah, I absolutely should have just, especially once they fetched, you just cast the sword because then they can't even, they can't counterspell here. But yeah. I think it was because I thought the bolt they revealed to the Expressive Iteration 2 Expressive Iterations ago was actually in their hand. And it turns out it wouldn't have really mattered anyway, but it would have meant that the Sword of Fire and Ice was in play, which is better than in my hand. They go ahead and dash Ragavan again, and they grab an Esper Sentinel, which is pretty good, which we actually, I think, end up Prismatic Ending because I don't want to deal with that tax. Play another land tapped, and what do we got? Springleaf Drum, perfect. So we go ahead and Prismatic Ending the Sentinel. Of course we pay. They go ahead and dash the Ragavan again. They grab a Hammer, and they go ahead and play the Hammer because at this point they have 9 mana, so they can actually dash the Ragavan and put a Hammer on it. I'm counting their mana right here. They get to consider. Yeah, the game is quite over at this point. They even have the Darcy to follow up, which is crazy that they have 11 cards, but only 3 types. At least we have the Ink Moth, but we're just going to go ahead and animate, block, they counterspell the Sanctifier we draw, and the game is over. I will see y'all in round 2. Okay, here we are for round 2. They reveal Lurrus of the Dream Den. We mulligan a 0-land hand, I believe, and keep this hand. It's got a Esper Sentinel, Giver of Runes, Pure Steel Paladin, and we go ahead and bottom the Ink Moth. We're thinking about it. I'm really not totally sure, but it seems right. I think we need both colored lands, and I don't really want to give up any spells. I think the Giver might be slightly worse. I think either decision is potentially correct. We're on the play, so Esper Sentinel. I want to keep the Giver because it protects the Pure Steel Paladin, obviously. And the Ink Moth, we can't really leverage that mana too much, but we can cast Nettlecyst off of it, so it's close for sure. We do end up bottoming the Ink Moth Nexus, playing out the Esper Sentinel, because playing that thing on turn 1 is just, it's so good. All right, so we know it's a red, black, X Lurrus deck. It's probably the Jund Saga Zoomer deck. Yeah, so they play out this Ragavan, and it's a question of what do we want to do here. And we go ahead and play the Pure Steel just because it's better on our mana. In retrospect, I think I'm supposed to let this hit me because the Esper Sentinel also the Esper Sentinel dying also puts us further away from Metalcraft, which is not ideal. Plus now if they have a 2-mana removal spell, we're in trouble. Yeah, so if they had just the 1-mana removal spell before, it would be fine. So the Inquisition, I say bye-bye Nettlecyst because I assume that's what they're taking. And they actually take the Giver of Runes, and I don't quite understand why. So yeah, we play out the Nettlecyst, get to draw a card off of it. I don't think they thought about us getting to draw a card off of the Nettlecyst, which is pretty big. Hammer's also a pretty good draw here. We get to bash in for 2. And we're actually not in a terrible spot here. We get to make a construct plus play Hammer next turn, which is pretty good. Yeah, so they go ahead, bolt the Paladin, which makes a lot of sense. Go ahead, leave a card on top, play the Forest, and play a Tarmogoyf, which is a very big boy. And they managed to get to Delirium. Another land isn't really what we wanted to see, but it's fine. I go ahead and play the Colossus Hammer to go ahead and just make the Nettlecyst a little bit bigger. And we pass the turn. I go ahead and make a construct now since they're tapped out. This way, if they have Bolt, they actually can't kill the Nettlecyst, which is quite relevant. They shock and go to combat, so we're probably just taking the full 8 here. If they attack with both, they choose to just attack with the creature that they have no choice on. Yep, another DRC, and Lurrus to hand, sure. So with Lurrus to hand, it's a question of what are we getting, and we definitely make a construct because we're against Jund. We want to get every card of value that we possibly can. I grabbed the Shadow Spear, which is fine, especially since we can suit up this Germ, which does turn it into a 6/6. I think I just did the math wrong, thinking it would be a 7/7 for whatever reason. And we pass the turn, since I have no good attacks here. Opponent does have a very real clock on us with the double Dragon Rage Channeler, and if they attack with Tarmogoyf, I'm just triple blocking, because then they need multiple removal spells to keep their Goyf around, but I believe they just attack with the 2 Dragon Rage Channelers. Opponent tanks on this for a hot minute. Yeah, so they go ahead and just attack with the Dragon Rage Channelers. We go ahead and take it because we can't block. They play the Lurrus, and they get to put the Ragavan into play as well, and it is our turn. Now, in retrospect, I think what I was supposed to do here was actually just move the Nettle, attack. Either attack with the Germ, the suicide attack, just to gain 6 life, and then move the Nettlecyst and the Shadow Spear onto a construct, because Nettlecyst gives +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would give +5/+5, but we put that on a construct token that, yeah, I think we were just supposed to move the Nettlecyst, move the Shadow Spear onto a construct, and attack for, I think, 13 damage. It might have been 11 still. And go ahead, and if I'm not grabbing Kaldra here, I don't know when I'm grabbing it, so that feels correct. But I actually get the Colossus Hammer here, I believe. Yeah, so I grab the hammer and play it to turn the constructs into 7/7s and the Germ into an 8/8. But once again, I think knowing that these decks don't really play Fatal Push or really Abrupt Decay or Terminate, sometimes with 1 in their list, if we had just made the construct into 11/11 or 13/13, I think the game just ends that way. And I think it puts us in a very similar spot, except we're also just gaining so much life. So they double block with the Lurrus and the Tarmogoyf, and then they throw a Ragavan onto the bus. There's not a whole lot of thought process here because we need to kill the Lurrus anyway. Otherwise, they just get the Goyf back. And yeah, we get to deal 8, kill off 2 creatures. And we're actually not in a terrible spot here, but once again, I think we would just be in a much better spot if I had just taken the very simple line of throw all the stuff on one big dude. But, had not played this configuration in the deck. Still kind of learning some of the finer points of it as well, and kind of going from there. I'm having a lot of fun with the deck, though. Unfortunately, they have Witherbloom command, which that card, what a jerk. So they get to kill the Shadow Spear and kill the Esper Sentinel, which is not, my favorite thing, but here we are. And they get to pay for the Esper Sentinel. So we need to find a Pure Steel Paladin or, something. We need to find something. And looking back, if instead of another hammer and playing the very aggressive line, if instead with the Saga I go get Nile Spellbomb, I get to turn the Dragon Rage Channeler, I get to shrink the Channelers and the Tarmogoyf, and I get to I buy myself time that way, and it means that the Lurrus doesn't have any food to bring back. So I don't think in retrospect it was correct to get that. So yeah, it's not great. So at least we get to crack the clearing for an Inkmoth Nexus. It's not great. We can at least, yeah, so I mean, we have lethal here. We can animate the Inkmoth Nexus and attack for 2 damage. Yeah, so theoretically they're dead. They do have the Unholy Heat though, which is unfortunate. And once again, if I had grabbed the Nile Spellbomb, I think I would have been in better shape here. But either way, we're only taking 3 now, and we're taking pretty much lethal on the crackback. We're gonna animate. Might as well get an extra point of damage in there. And they play the Spellbomb. They go ahead and attack with everything, and they have the Unholy Heat to point at the Inkmoth that we're blocking with, and we die. So we're looking at what to bring in. Definitely the Sanctifier and Vec. They're excellent. I like the Path. I kind of like the Sword because it draws a card, it gets grindy. It's pretty reasonable, but you know, the endings and the Sanctifiers are 1000% yes. I think Path to Exile is reasonable enough to bring in. The question is, what do we cut? And see where we end up. And we end up cutting a Memnite, the 4 Ornithopters, a Spellbomb, a Steel Shaper's Gift, and a Springleaf Drum. And I don't think cutting the Springleaf Drum is basically ever correct in retrospect, but here we are. Live and learn, right? Cool. So looking at our hand, we have a Saga, 2 other lands, a Path, a Prismatic Ending, a Stoneforge, and a Shadow Spear. Like, Sand is quite good, and I also don't really want to mulligan against the Jund deck, so we're keeping. Lead with the Courtyard, of course. Play out the Shadow Spear. We just want to use our mana at every point. Wood Foothills, nothing, which you kind of love to see. We're going to go ahead and play out the Saga here and Stoneforge it up. It's a question of what do we get. Because this is they haven't had to cast any removal spells, I don't think I want the Cauldra, so it's a consideration of Nettle Cyst or Sword. I don't really like the Hammer just because I have no way to equip it yet. Yeah, so we grab the Nettle Cyst, which is just next turn it'll be 1 from the Saga, 1 from the Spear, 1 from the Nettle Cyst. It'll be a 3-mana 3/3, potentially larger if we find like a 0. Yep, Goyf is fine. Sigarda's Aid, not a bad card. Not a bad card at all. But the question is, do you run out the Nettle Cyst? Do you Prismatic Ending? Or do you make a Construct? Go ahead and play their land for turn. Go ahead and attack us and play Ragavan. We go ahead, take the opportunity to make a Construct, I believe. They can kill if they really want to, but I'm fine with that. Yeah, so it's a consideration of Pure Steel Paladin's real good here. But I think we want all of our dudes. And here's where I feel like we are supposed to get a drum because we're going to be choked on mana for most of the game. We get to play Sigarda's Aid or potentially something else this turn. But I like Prismatic Ending the Monkey. I was definitely supposed to cast my spell pre-combat, whatever I'm doing, because now we don't have that extra mana. They terminate a Construct. So we go ahead, take the opportunity to Path, I believe. Go ahead and float, and we go ahead and Path the Ragavan, which is, I think reasonable to do because we have the Prismatic Ending for Tarmogoyf. We can afford to take a hit or two. I think that's completely fine because he's only a 4 or 5 right now. He's not, exceptionally big. He's not that 6/7 Goyf that he was last game. So they do have a K command for the the Springleaf Drum and the Construct. And okay, and so at this point it's a 5/6. I don't think we can reasonably just keep taking hits, but it is pretty close. We do get a hammer here because we have the Sigarda's Aid, of course. Oh, we get the Cauldron Complete. I don't know about that, but yeah, I think we were supposed to just get the hammer because we have the Sigarda's Aid. I think I just blanked on it. Yep, and a second K command to clear the other 2 non-land permanents we have. Yeah, so now we absolutely have to exile the Goyf. Not much question there. Yep, Dashed Monkey, totally reasonable magic card. Don't worry about it. Put Lurrus into the hand. Turn the monkey to their hand as well. Yeah. Guess we play Pure Steel Paladin and hope for the best. Yep, so we know their hand is Lurrus Monkey. Mystery card. Go pass back to them, and we can't block because if the Pure Steel Paladin is our only chance to win, I think. So as much as it sucks if they have a bolt and we die that way, we're not beating a bolt anyway. So I'm not going to worry about it. Yep, they exile an Inkmoth Nexus. They play out the Lurrus. We draw a land, and it's a question of what are we doing here? The problem is if we play the land, they if we use the Silent Clearing for mana, we go to 2 and we die to a dash to Ragavan anyway. So I just decide, let's go ahead and put the into play, draw a card, see what happens there. Okay, cool, another body at least. I'm like, well, we can't. we can't not play the Giver out. Yeah, we do not have a choice. If we had one other, like if we still had the Shadow Spear in play, of course the game's very different, but they had a second K command. Well, I guess that was the first K command, right? The second one did us in. Yeah, so if they have a removal spell, we die. And it looks like, well, okay. So you're saying there's a chance. They just attack with the monkey. We block with the paladin. Because if they have a shatter for the hammer, we're dead anyway. But blocking with the Giver seems fine because it doesn't actually make a difference. Ultimately, I don't think it does. Cool, Ancient Grudge. This Jund player did not want to lose to any artifact deck. The double K command Ancient Grudge, is a thing. One thing to note is we did only draw one additional land the entire game. Which that could be cool, but it was mostly terrible. And at this point, we are confirmed dead. So I will see y'all in round 3. We'll see if we can turn it around. All right, we are back for round 3, and hopefully it goes a little bit better. Starting off 0-2, not exactly how we're won. Definitely locked out of top 8, probably top 16, but we'll see how it goes. It's a 1-land hand. We're on the draw, and we have Sagardazade and Hammer. Like, we have 3 ways to equip Hammer and the Hammer. We have the Sentinel, we have the Ornithopter. This is a close one, but like I think it's definitely a keep. And we'll kind of see what happens. They go ahead and play Verdant Catacombs past turn. We find another Sagardazade. And we're going to go ahead and play the Thopter as well, because now if we draw land, we can play Aid plus Hammer. And this way, if they kill the Sentinel, we'll have another body that has haste. Or that isn't summoning sick. Okay, so Steel Shaper's Gift. So we're really hoping to just spike a land here. That's a very good land. All right, Aid. Yeah, let's get in there. And I decided I'm just going to make him have it. Like, not spending the mana doesn't do anything, because if we hit a land next turn, we just want to start making constructs anyway. So it's, yeah. And the opponent's probably dead now, because actual red-green just doesn't have a way to deal with an equipped creature. Yeah, so they die, and we're on to game 2. So I'm not totally sure what they're doing, but I do know they have red-based removal. So we bring in the Sanctifier and Vex, and we cut 3 Ornithopters. That's about it. All right, so here we have a Saga Inkmoth, multiple double white spells. Nah, that's a mulligan. This, however, is a Saga Springleaf keep. And we get to keep Sanctifier. We actually bottom the Sanctifier just because we don't think we're going to get to cast it. In retrospect, we can probably have kept that over one of these. But this start is quite good. We have the Saga into Springleaf Drum, and we play out the Memnite here, of course, and play the Esper Sentinel. Go ahead and pass it back to the opponent. Opponent go ahead and fetches and shocks. Plays Wrenn at 6, so we will get to draw a card, but it will also get to eat multiple creatures. We draw another Esper Sentinel, so that's pretty sweet. Okay, so the concern here is if we play the Esper Sentinel, like we only have single white, and this Saga is going to be getting a hammer, so we definitely need to prioritize the Sagardazade, unfortunately, and we do get to bash in at the Wrenn for 1. Wrenn goes to 1. So if Wrenn wants to trade off with the Memnite, I'm not happy. Wrenn killed 2 creatures, but he also drew me a card, so it's not too bad. Get their land back, and did not want to trade. Okay, so we get to float a mana here. Of course, we draw the land like 1 turn too late, but still not going to complain too much. And all right, yeah, I mean, let's go get a Colossus Hammer. I'm considering getting a drum as well, but then I remember we have the Sagardazade in play. So yeah, and we go ahead and put it on I believe the Ornithopter. Yeah. So Lightning Bolt, so no one's surprise. And I definitely should have tapped the Ornithopter and the drum to float the extra mana, because now we're in an awkward spot. Yeah, like if we had done that, we would have been able to put the Wrenn back down to 1 and attack it with the Nettle Cyst, but now we can't. And I'm trying to figure out if we can multi-spell, and not really. Like, not floating with the drum was really bad. And so we do play a creature that won't die to Wrenn and 6 immediately. I actually meant to put it on the Memnite, but then I let but I stacked the triggers wrong. So Living Weapon resolved after the Sigarda's Aid, and so we lost it. Of course, in paper, this would happen later. You know, is what it is. Okay, Utopia Sprawl. A little late to the party, but it is what it is. Okay, Ren goes ahead and plinks down the Memnite. We go ahead and lead with the Esper Sentinel to kind of force the action. Yeah, hardcast Force of Vigor, not my favorite thing, but is what it is. And I get why they killed the drum, but I feel like you're still supposed to kill Sigarda's Aid there. Yep, and Ren can trade off with the Esper Sentinel, which is gross, but but you know, they Force of Vigor, Ren and 6 is killed. What? 3 creatures at this point if it kills the Esper Sentinel, but it doesn't. An Arbor Elf, sure. And what else do we have? Do we have another Force of Vigor opponent? Do we have, yeah, Force of Vigor, the Esper Sentinel, and the Sigarda's Aid. This has been 2 hardcast Force of Vigors, so it's brutal. But okay. We have that Kaldra in our deck, and I don't think they can beat Kaldra. And we have this Giver to protect the Stoneforge, so here we go. I think about attacking, and then I realized that would be an incredibly poor decision. But yeah, like, the takeaway is I don't think they can beat the Kaldra. So let's put Kaldra in, try to kill him. Lightning Bolt, okay, well, we hope they don't have 2. And they Season Pyro, they just get to draw 2 cards, which is pretty rad for them. Yeah, they have plenty of mana. That has not been the problem for the opponent. They go ahead, pick up the Wooded Foothills, and play it. And as tempting as it is, just Sigarda's Aid first. Yeah, all right. It's like I want to put the hammer on it so bad. And if we find a Paladin, we can, because that's the 3rd equipment. And we get to kill the Ren, even if they block with the Seasoned Pyro, because of Trample being a mechanic. So we finally get to kill the Ren after it has done a ton of work. They go ahead and fetch up, and opponent plays Wooded Foothills, another one. Another Seasoned Pyro, pretty good. Yep, so they discard Anger of the Gods, reasonable. I don't know about that card. It's probably fine, but I'm not very high on it. Fury, sure. Yeah, so they get to kill a Stoneforge Mystic with their 5 mana card. And here I'm seeing if we can actually attack. The belief is yes. And we go ahead and get a hammer because we will get to hammer a Kaldra. And I realize I'm counting they can deal 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, potentially. But we're just going to block the Fury. Yeah, I don't know where my math was coming from. It's 6 from the Fury, 2 from the 1/1s, and then 4, so 12. So even if they had the bolt for the Stoneforge, we get to get in there. Or we get to not die. It's pretty great. Yeah, so we block the 6 damage, I believe. Actually, I think we might just take it here. Yeah, with them empty-handed, it's fine. Sigarda's Aid, get in there with both. Turn it into a 15/15 first strike haste indestructible trampler. Yep, because they know about the hammer. All right, so that was certainly a matchup where Kaldra was. Is it better than Lurrus? Maybe, probably not. In that matchup, it might be, but yeah. Going on to the next match. All right, and we are back for round 4. So we finally won a match, which, it's great to see. We have no white sources in that hand. This hand has Sigarda's Aid, Saga, Inkmoth Nexus, Plains. It's just a question of like, all right, what are we throwing back? And I think it's the Stoneforge Mystic, because we want to make sure we have our 3 lands for the Saga tokens, and we already have a hammer and an aid. And we could potentially kill just like on turn 3. We're on the play. Like, this is great. So just play out the Sentinel, of course, pass the turn. Our opponent did not reveal a companion either, so we don't know what's going on over there 100%. So we drew Springleaf Drum. Go ahead and play out the Saga, which I'm not sure is correct. It's possible we're supposed to play out the Inkmoth here, especially with the drum, because next turn we could have hammer. But I guess we just decide to hammer up this Esper Sentinel, which seems fine, because now we can actually start making construct the next 2 turns, and get another hammer off the Urza Saga Chapter 3. They do Dead Gone our Esper Sentinel, which is fine. We still draw a card. Okay, Giver of Runes, not a bad one. Yeah, so like we're still ramped up to kill on turn 4, even though they had the removal piece, because now we get to play Giver, Springleaf, and Inkmoth Nexus, and an Esper Sentinel, which you love to see. Lead with the Esper Sentinel, of course, because this way, if they have a removal spell for it, then we're safe. Because we've seen Dead Gone, we're almost positive it's Temur Crashcade. We know that they aren't going to play actual counterspell for the Esper Sentinel, so this is safe to play, and then we just get to use the Esper Sentinel to play the Giver and put an Inkmoth Nexus into play. Yep, go ahead, play out the Giver like we said. Yeah, so they had Fury. They exiled Seasoned Pyromancer, kill both our guys, which kind of sucks. Game should be over now. And so yeah, if they, because now we just get to animate Inkmoth Nexus in response to the Urza Saga trigger with the Urza Saga. The hammer comes in, we equip it to the Nexus, and then we animate Nexus again with the planes. It becomes a flying 11 power infect creature, and they die. Pretty straightforward. There's no reason for me not to do it, so I do the thing, because it's not like we're even casting the hammer. Hammer, throw it on the bug, being very careful not to tap it for mana. And dead. And that's how you kind of want that Rhinos game to go. And your opponent like tapping out to show you, oh, it's fine, is also kind of where you want to be. But yeah, so we will see it in game 2. All right, so how we boarded. On the draw, you bring in the Thoughtseizes for sure, and the Tyrannus Magistrates, because that's why they're here. And I cut the Memnites, because it's whatever. The Nile Spellbomb, because their graveyard doesn't matter. Steel Shaper's Gift, and an Esper Sentinel. I don't know. Maybe you're supposed to trim some other things. This seemed fine, though. At least Ornithopter. It takes 2 points from the Fury to kill. That's kind of my thought process behind Ornithopter over Memnite. I also don't think the 1 power of Memnite's going to make or break here. The one thing I could consider is boarding out maybe like the Nettlecyst to keep the Esper Sentinel or the Steel Shaper's Gift, but this seemed totally fine. Cool. So we have a hand. It has... Actually, let's take a look. Yeah, so it has Disruption, Sigardizade, Pure Steel Paladin, and a Hammer in the Saga. So it's a question of what do we put back? And I don't think we want to put the Ornithopter back, because if we like rip Hammer off the top, it's also a very fast kill. And so I think it's probably the Paladin, because he's going to be the slowest piece. We also don't have guaranteed Metalcraft. Yeah, it's close, but I think it's the Paladin. All right, so opponent plays Misty Rainforest and passes the turn. All right, well, let's lead with Concealed Courtyard Thoughtseize. The Inkmoth is a nice draw there, because that means any hammer is going to be actual lethal. So we see a Force of Negation and 4 Cascade spells. So let's take the Force of Negation. Yeah. And the other reason to lead with Thoughtseize instead of Sigardizade is obviously 1, Force of Negation, but 2, Force of Vigor. So like being able to disrupt one of those pieces is really good. Yeah, we play it's a question of do you play Inkmoth or Urza Saga here? Because we don't have a hammer, you probably just play the Saga is my best bet, because we need to find a hammer as well. And we attack with Thopter to scare them, and you gotta send a message. Opponent fetches, play in Crackwooded Foothills. Looks like a Shardless Agent to me. Cool. All right. Yep, you've got 10 power. It's pretty good for 3 mana. It's like pretty strong. Yeah, play out the Inkmoth. And we just kind of hope they didn't draw a Disruption, because if they didn't draw a Disruption, then we actually kill them next turn, because the Saga goes off, grabs a hammer, we animate the Inkmoth again, and it equips with Sigardizade, and they die. Yep, attack for 10. Me blocking doesn't make a difference. Yep, they do get to pump. And I'm actually super happy that they do this, because it means that they don't have something like Brazen Borrower. So not that we can play around it. Like we're jamming next turn regardless, so not worried about it. Yeah, so we take 13 here, but 13 is not lethal, so might as well make a construct. Cool. So we'll go ahead and animate with the mana. All right, yep. Throw it on the Inkmoth. We almost throw it on the Ornithopter, which, very sag. Make it a flyer again and, kill him. Yeah, so when the Rhinos deck doesn't play the control role and it tries to play the aggro role in the matchup where it definitely has to be the control, it loses the game. And so, yeah, I will see y'all in round 5. Yeah, we're 2-2 now. All right, so no companion revealed by the opponent. We have a way to equip hammer in the Paladin, and a hammer in the Stoneforge, and an Infector. So yeah, it's an easy keep. If we hit a 0, we actually get to lead on Saga. So it looks like we are playing against Tron, which Tron's a pretty favorable matchup, so I'm not super sad about that. Yeah, we'll go ahead and leave with the Drum, because this will let us potentially like go Pure Steel plus Hammer next turn, draw a card off of the Hammer. Play Blast Zone. Okay, Chalice of the Void. Okay, so it's E-Tron, which is less good when they have the Chalice. Otherwise, I think it's still a fine matchup. I'm not happy when they Chalice us on one, of course. This is, to note, something good about playing the Kaldra version or the Lurrus version, because it means that they don't know you have Lurrus in your deck, so they're less likely to just aggressively mulligan to Chalice of the Void. Yeah, so we end up playing the Inkmoth and the Stoneforge Mystic because we can potentially, over a couple turns, Inkmoth kill them with the Colossus Hammer in our hand. And we grab the Kaldra Complete because I don't think they can beat a Kaldra Complete, and they don't have a lot of interaction points for a Stoneforge Mystic or a Kaldra. Maybe like one or two pieces in their entire deck. They go ahead, Expedition Map. What are we getting? Eldrazi Temple. Sure. It's pretty good. But they have the Dismember for the Stoneforge, which, gross. And the joke is I didn't even care about getting a Cauldron. I cared more about Stoneforging in the Hammer. Oh, thank goodness we drew another one drop. So yeah, we realize we can play the Saga and animate the Nexus with the Saga and use the Concealed Courtyard and use the Springleaf Drum with the Nexus creature to cast the Pure Steel, which is good because we want to get this Saga into play ASAP as well, because we just need to get a hammer onto something, and the Saga is the other backdoor way to get a hammer in. Yep, Reality Smasher. Okay, yeah. When they have Chalice into Dismember into Reality Smasher, much harder matchup. I will totally acknowledge that. But we do get to start making some constructs. I really didn't want to draw the third hammer. If I draw the fourth hammer, I'm going to be very, very sad. There was a consideration to making a construct with the Saga, because you can sneaky pump it by animating the Inkmoth Nexus. So if we had double blocked the Reality Smasher with the Pure Steel and the token, then that's okay. But I don't think that's how we're winning. I think we're winning with token beatdown more than likely. The other thing is they could have actually blown the Blast Zone to kill the Springleaf Drum to shrink the construct back down. And the reason we do this is because we can't, like, if we get a hammer and put it on a Inkmoth Nexus, then they just blow the Blast Zone and we lose our hammer anyway. That said, we will get to draw a card off of the Pure Steel Paladin. We really drew these hammers and Pure Steel in like the opposite order that we wanted to. Yep, unless we get to draw a card now, but it's a one drop. Yep, so they're cracking the Blast Zone now, which, yep, so at least we get to play out another Pure Steel. Yeah. They definitely shrunk down the constructs a fair bit there, but it's fine. We're still far from dead, but it's also not looking good considering we just drew more hammers. Another Smasher is a huge problem, so we definitely need to triple block here. We will lose our entire team. I think that's just kind of the nature. Yeah. We don't actually have to block with the Pure Steel though, because we can just make the Inkmoth into an artifact, turning both the constructs into 6/6s. That being said, we probably should have blocked, because then if they want to kill the Pure Steel, they have to apply more damage. Because yeah, if we block with the Pure Steel and they want to kill it, they can't do enough to kill both constructs, only one. Yeah, so I guess we'll play out this Pure Steel Paladin. And this is a matchup where Lurrus wouldn't have been great. It would have allowed us to get the Stoneforge back, and I guess the Stoneforge could have then started putting in Colossus hammers, but it's close. Kaldra is obviously stronger if they had not had exactly the Dismember when they did, but you know, that's why you put the cards in the deck. We can't really take this hit because we die, so Reshaper, sure. That's a question of, do we crack the Canopy? And we probably, or the Clearing, and we probably do, because it's not like we want to pay a bunch of life with the Clearing anyway. Perfect, another Inkmoth Nexus. Let's do this thing. Let's yeet this wheat. So is the Chalice deck. I decided to go ahead and fire up the Inkmoth Nexus, which they main deck Warping Whale. So they definitely did have more answers to the the Stoneforge than just the Dismember, so it feels less bad. But yeah, so they got a land off of that, because we can't just take 3 damage. Okay, so we have a 7 and 6 cards that get chaliced. In paper, I would definitely be chalice checking them, but I'm not going to chalice check people on Moto because you can't. You literally can't mess that one up. Another Warping Whale. Another Warping Whale is a lot of Warping Whale. Oh, they have spells. I don't think we can beat spells at this point. Oh, man. Chalice on 2. Okay. We drew another Inkmoth Nexus. But I do believe we are pretty stone dead at this point. That's a spell. We can't beat spells. Why are we still playing this game? They took the Cauldron and we conceded. Yeah, so looking at this, let's see how we finish up boarding. Cool. So we end up boarding by cutting a couple of Memnites, the Nile Spellbomb because their graveyard doesn't matter, 1 Esper Sentinel, and a Steel Shaper's Gift. It looks like for the Sword of Fire and Ice, because our creatures getting upsized and drawing cards is really relevant here. 3 Prismatic Ending because we need to kill Chalice of the Void, and a Path to Exile. Yeah, they're more 1-drops, but we also have some answers to Chalice now, so it's not too bad. And I think you do potentially board differently on the play versus the draw in the matchup as well. So we'll see. This hand is garbage, so we threw it in the trash where it belonged, and we have quite a good hand now. It's a question of what do you throw back. Stoneforge Mystic is obviously very good. Pure Steel Paladin's very good. Most of these cards are very good. Question is, what are we putting back? This would be an insane 7-card hand. Yeah, so we end up putting the Ornithopter back because the Inkmoth can secretly be an artifact for the Metalcraft of the Pure Steel Paladin, and I think the Stoneforge and the Stoneforge is definitely the more powerful card than the Ornithopter. Cool. So they also mulligan to 6, and we're just going to play out this hammer. So we want to unload our 1-drops as quickly as possible so it doesn't get chaliced. And as much as I want to put this Esper Sentinel into play, I think it's probably correct to Stoneforge here. And it's a question of, do we play Paladin or Stoneforge Mystic here as well? I think it's pretty close. Go ahead and, because we can't kill next turn with the Inkmoth Nexus anyway, even, we just won't have the mana, because we would have to play the hammer, animate, and then we couldn't equip. We went ahead and grabbed the Nettlecyst since we already have a hammer, and Nettlecyst does present a fairly large body that can contend with the Eldrazi. Now we play our Inkmoth Nexus because that's all we got. We play out the Ornithopter because we don't want to get Chalice on 0'd either. Play out the Esper Sentinel, of course. And we're going to put this Nettlecyst in through the Stoneforge activation. Make a big boy. It'll be a Ornithopter, Esper Sentinel, Colossus Hammer, and we can animate the Inkmoth. So a 5/5 with the Nettlecyst. 5/5 is a big problem for the Eldrazi deck usually, and if it turns into a 6/6, the game ends. And we can turn it into a 15/15 quite easily. Cool, Matter Reshaper, don't care about that. All right, and like I said, go ahead and put in this Nettlecyst. It's bigger than everything. Yeah, and it's like, man, if we had played the Pure Steel Paladin forever ago, we would have been able to path the Matter Reshaper and almost just kill them. Yeah, so just suit up the Ornithopter. They're going to block the Ornithopter, I'm sure. And in retrospect, this is probably incorrect. We were probably just supposed to put it on the Esper Sentinel, because that way if I wasn't going to attack with the Esper Sentinel, then I definitely should have put the hammer on the Esper Sentinel instead, just because that way, if they have a non-creature they want to play, we get to absolutely draw a card. So Karn the Great Creator, sure. I mean, we still get to draw a card, so it ended up being fine. He's probably going to animate the hammer here. Yep, hammer turns into a 1/1. This is fine, because we have the power to actually just kill the Karn outright with multiple attacks. Yeah, because the Sagardizade does in fact pump the Nettlecyst, because Nettlecyst cares about the enchantments as well. And so now Nettlecyst will kill Karn by itself, so we get to put a bunch of extra damage at them. We can do it either way, really, but Nettlecyst at Karn, everything else at you, opponent. Double checking. Yeah, so opponent takes 5 and 1 infect, and we get their Karn off the table. Pretty good. And I couldn't actually re-equip the Colossus Hammer because it was still a creature, and a creature cannot be equipped to a creature. So as much as I wanted to equip the hammer to something post-combat, I could not. And opponent should be dead. Yep, so they go ahead and play the Karn out. They go ahead and pay for it. They go ahead and animate the Nettlecyst, and they're dead. We're just going to animate the Inkmoth and kill them. Keep it simple and clean. All right, there you go. That's how you do it. So game 3, we might sideboard slightly differently this time, because I realized the Memnites really do suck. They just they just kind of suck. And I think Thoughtseize is actually quite good. One, it can nab a Chalice, obviously. But two, like, it can nab Karn. Something Karn gets with its wish can get that too. So I think Thoughtseize is actually quite serviceable in the matchup. I do want to keep the Ornithopters in case they have something along the lines of Ensnaring Bridge. You can ambush with Ornithopter and the Hammer out of nowhere. That being said, I board out an extra Esper Sentinel. I think on the draw, Esper Sentinel is like pretty medium, so I kind of like that. This hand is totally fine. We have 2 ways to attach a hammer. We have the hammer. We also have turn 1 Thoughtseize off of Ornithopter Springleaf Drum. And if we hit a land, we actually just get to make construct. So Pithing Needle is the first card they're playing here, and they name Inkmoth, which is fine. All right, let's Thoughtseize. Show me those secrets. Yeah, think about Sigarda's Aid because of Chalice, but then I realized, oh, we have to get the hammer into play anyway. So Dismember, Ratchet Bomb, Smasher, All Is Dust. So it's between the Dismember and the Ratchet Bomb because All Is Dust is pretty medium, especially if you can get a hammer onto something. In Reality Smasher, we're going to outsize, so it's a question of Ratchet Bomb or All Is Dust, and Ratchet Bomb being able to kill construct tokens is kind of the tiebreaker here. But I think it's reasonable to pick either one. Dismember is a consideration because it can interact at instant speed, obviously. But yeah, so we go ahead, take the Ratchet Bomb, and we draw a Plains off the top like we were hoping for with the Heart of the Cards. We don't need to kill the Needle, so we just get to pass, make a construct. And so if they didn't have the Dismember, I probably would have just gone for the Sigarda's Aid, Hammer, 10U plan. But because they do have that, then, okay, well, Chalice is fine because we have this Prismatic ending. And opponent's probably going to be really upset. But first things first, make a 3/3. So the question is, are we actually going to Prismatic Ending the Chalice this turn, or are we going to do something else? Because you have the ability to Prismatic Ending plus Sigarda's Aid, or we can make a construct, go get a Springleaf Drum, something like that. But we decide we're not going to make a construct this turn. They're also tapped out, which means they can't Dismember, which is pretty sweet. It's just a question of what are we getting. Springleaf Drum, because we need the mana, so Springleaf Drum's probably pretty good. And we need to kill this Chalice, so we just get it out of here. And now we actually get to, we get to Sigarda's Aid. And then we can actually hammer at instant speed, which is pretty rad. They have Dismember, so we should probably hammer now. And that's what I remember. It's like, oh wait, yeah, cards, they do things. I don't think it makes a huge difference if you put the Ornithopter or the Construct, but diversifying your power is probably pretty good. In retrospect, it probably is better to put it on the Construct because you can then tap the Ornithopter with Springleaf Drum and you're not really losing any power. But we get to Stoneforge plus grab a hammer and they're dead anyway. So, yep, and the game's over. They cannot beat a hammered creature. Yeah, so that's round 5. We are now 3-2, and I'll see you in round 6. All right, we are back for round 6 now, and let's see how it goes. Opponent reveals Lurrus of the Dream Den. So whenever I see that, I generally just think the Ragavan, Jund deck, or the Mirror Match. This hand sucks too. This hand's fine. And I think it's correct to bottom. Probably just need the Springleaf Drum and the Esper Sentinel and the Inkmoth because that is double white. Yeah, so let's see what the opponent does. Okay, so it is in fact the Mirror Match. Not quite the Mirror Match, but okay, cool. Paladin was a pretty good draw. Now we just need to find a hammer and we'll be in pretty good shape. And Esper Sentinel is excellent in the Mirror Match. Or at least it feels pretty good in the Mirror Match. I can see boarding some out on the draw, but the card's just like very, very powerful because your mana is so taxed in these kind of matchups. Yeah, so they have to pay 2 mana for their drum, which I'm probably going to have to do next turn as well. Unless, of course, we just draw. Okay, Steel Shaver's Gift it is. And they got Colossus Hammer. And so we can either play Silent Clearing Paladin or we can play Inkmoth Nexus, Drum, pay for Drum, and then cast the Shadow Spear without having to pay the tax because it's not the first spell. Yeah, so Pay for that. Play out the Shadow Spear. All right, well, we have Metalcraft. We just need a hammer to get it all rolled up, and we'll be in good shape. All right, what they got? Please no Paladin. Please no Paladin. Please no Paladin. All right, so they have the Paladin, and they have the hammer too, and they can pay the tax. Like, this is so bad. So bad. I'm looking, all right, how do we sideboard? Luckily, we do have a lot of really good tools for the mirror match. Nothing like specifically for the mirror match, but we just have a bunch of removal, right? Prismatic Endings, a Path to Exile, and the 4 Thoughtseizes are all there. So they go ahead and crack us for 11, which it's fine. All right, we really need to find a hammer, please. Yeah, so we go ahead and play the Silent Clearing, crack the Silent Clearing, and we're dead. Might not technically be dead, but pretty dead. Like, we could play the Pure Steel Paladin, and then we have to block with it. They're on the play. They had the turn 3 combo, and we were on the draw and didn't quite have the turn 3 combo, yeah. So bring in those cards that we talked about. And I think I want to be the control in this specific matchup just because I have more controlling tools. Obviously, Denial Spellbomb is kind of good against Lurrus, but it's not like we're going to be killing a bunch of things anyway. Boarding in the mirror match is really tight. It's a lot of guesswork, I'm going to be honest. I don't know. Cool. So we end up going cut the Nettle Cyst because it can get big, but who cares? It's not getting to be a 10/10. Cut the Ornithopters, and then we cut 1 Giver of Runes, 1 Steel Shaper's Gift, and the Nile Spellbomb for the 4 Thoughtseize, the 3 Prismatic Ending, and the Path to Exile, which feels right, about right. All right, what does our hand look like? Do we actually get to keep? Yeah, this is certainly a keep. Probably just gonna run out the 0 and the Giver on turn 1 and go from there. And they did mulligan to 6 too, so land, Giver, Memnite, go. Yeah, so we're just wanting to find a hammer at this point. And Esper Sentinel, which is fine actually because we don't have any other sources. It's interesting because I don't know if I was actually supposed to Saga here. And the reason I'm leaving Giver up isn't to protect the Memnite, it's to protect the Pure Steel Paladin. Pure Steel Paladin and Giver of Runes also block Esper Sentinel exceptionally well, which is nice. Okay, so they probably drew that for turn. Play the Springleaf Drum. Hammer? All right, that's pretty good. The Giver's pretty good against the Hammer if they don't have a way to give it trample though. Yeah, so we're gonna see if we can just spike something off the top, and we do. we straight draw the Hammer, and we have the Memnite as the additional artifact, and we're playing the Ink Moth here because we can animate again next turn because we'll have that 3rd land in play. We get to draw a card. Like, we gave them a card, we don't care. And we also get a card. Yeah, we get to bash for free with the Pure Steel Paladin as well. And then we get to move the Colossus Hammer. And yeah, this is kind of exactly how this is the side you want to be on in the mirror match. Yeah, just casually draw Hammer is pretty good. Of course, I did play to my out there, right? Like, all right, if I draw exactly Hammer, we're in excellent shape. So I went ahead and cracked first. And so that is one of those small things that is easily overlooked, but it ended up, I don't know if the opponent would have been able to catch up if we had drawn the Hammer a turn later, but I mean, I'm pretty happy with the result there, of course. Sometimes when you play to your outs, you get rewarded. Okay, so they play Urza's Saga, see what all's going on. They go ahead and play Stoneforge Mystic, which, it's fine. Card's pretty good. Probably get a Shadow Spear here, would be my estimation if I had to guess. And opponent is just banking on us not having the extra mana source to give the Ink Moth flying again, or they're hoping I don't see it. They grabbed a hammer, of course, with the Stoneforge, as they should. They go ahead and play Steel Shaper's Gift as well. They reveal Shadow Spear, which, sure. But especially now that they're tapped out as well. Like, I had the Giver, so I had 1 piece of removal on lock, but now I know it's 100% safe to go for. As tempting as it is to Thoughtseize to get a little bit more information. We already knew 2 of the cards in their hand. Just killing the opponent's certainly the better line here. Yep, and that's the game. All right, see you in game 3. So I do go ahead and board out 2 Esper Sentinels on the draw. I bring the Giver back in as well as the Nettle Cyst. Nettle Cyst is a reasonably sized creature, especially if I'm able to pick them apart a little bit and then slam it. I don't know if it's correct. I do know Cauldron is great because it beats everything in combat. And this hand would be insane. This hand would be insane if literally if any of the Memnites, the Esper Sentinel, or the Prismatic Ending were a land, or even if the Drum were a land, I'd take that. But alas, they're not. Cool. So opponent looks like they kept 7. We have a totally reasonable hand. We have discard 4 lands, so we're definitely throwing a land back. I think it's the Inkmoth, because we definitely want Saga. Saga is the best card in the deck, and we want double white as well. Yeah, Drum starts pretty good. All right, Esper Sentinel, sure. So if I wasn't sure if I was playing the Esper Sentinel or Thoughtseize on one, the Esper Sentinel definitely answered that question. Okay. So just putting Lurrus into their hand. And so I read that as they have a very weak 7, because this doesn't seem like a 7 that you should reasonably keep, in my opinion. I will pay. And that means they kept a 5 land hand if you include the Springleaf Drum. So yeah, they kept Plains, Drum, Esper Sentinel, Memnite, and then at least 3 other lands. I don't know what those were, but this hand, I don't think this was a reasonable keep by the opponent. I think they are getting punished for it. Because the Lurrus, it's not even rebuying things, right? If they had a Seal of Cleansing, sure, absolutely. That way the Lurrus is just rebuying what's effectively Terminate every turn. Yeah, so it's a question of what all are we playing. We're definitely getting in there for our 1 point, and Thoughtseize, just lead with that. And I don't think we're paying here because I'd rather get the Paladin into play, I'm pretty sure, but I could totally be wrong. Also, if you Thoughtseize, then you literally Thoughtseize the top of their deck, but it's close. So we go ahead and Thoughtseize, and we choose not to pay, and we go ahead and take the Pure Steel Paladin, which with any luck, they drew it off of that. And then we play the Pure Steel Paladin, and 2/2s are just too powerful in this format. It's bigger than everything on the field. And so now next turn, we can play this Nettle Cyst and pay for the Esper Sentinel attacks with the Saga. Okay, opponent plays Plains, plays Shadow Spear, and certainly probably not blocking here. But the reality is we probably can, because we have this Nettle Cyst to follow up, and this Urza Saga, and we can't really keep paying the tax on Esper Sentinel. So Sigarda's Aid is kind of an insane draw here, because now Nettle Cyst has freaking Flash. So we can attack with the Esper Sentinel safely, and then when they suit up the Memnite and attack, we get to flash in the Nettle Cyst to block it. Yep, so they go ahead, suit up the Memnite with the Shadow Spear. After drawing a card with Silent Clearing, we get to flash this bad boy in. And while we do take 2 to do it, we get to eat their creature. And then next turn, we get to start making Construct, which will be sizable threats for sure. All right, get in there for 5. And it's a question of, do we make a Construct now? And I don't think it's worth the 1 extra point of damage. It is very tempting to Prismatic Ending the Shadow Spear, but I don't think we need to. And Prismatic Ending has better targets, like, a hammer. Sigarda's Aid for a hammer. Cool. Second Inkmoth, and no attacks. Perfect. And we'll be able to get a Shadow Spear or a hammer here, which is delightful. And I'm so low on life that it is really close between the Shadow Spear and we go ahead and put it on the Construct. I think it's reasonable to put it on either the Construct or the Germ. The following turn, if we end up equipping the Nettle Cyst to the Construct, we're gonna be pretty happy that that's the one that has lifelink, because I believe it would be a 14/14. Yeah, 14/14 lifelink Trampler if I equipped it next turn. Okay. So they animated an Inkmoth and blocked the Nettle Cyst because they wanted to gain 6 life, or 7 life, I guess. That's Paladin. It's pretty good. Colossus Hammer. We do get to draw a card off of the Esper Sentinel here. Sigarda's Aid is not a bad one. It does pump the Nettle Cyst if nothing else. And now they can equip a hammer and a Shadow Spear to this Inkmoth Nexus, but they are 1 mana short of giving it flying again, so we are not actually dead, which actually dead and almost dead are very different in this mirror match. Yeah. So they take the line that they kind of have to, because they also just need to gain life, right? They can't just take another hit. So they will. So we have to block here, right? We can't just take that. In fact, blocking with the Esper Sentinel doesn't do anything. Blocking with the Construct token means that we take 6 infect, and it will shrink my team. They will also gain 12 life, going to 21. So I mean, this is not a bad spot for them. but we can Prismatic ending the Pure Steel Paladin as well. We have a lot of live draws here because we have 5, 11, 12 power in play. So obviously finding a hammer, very ideal. But we'll see what else we can get. Okay, well that's a hammer. And so the game is now over. I'm just doing the math, making sure I'm not forgetting something, trying to see if there's a reason to do something else. But no, it's just Stoneforge, get a hammer, equip the hammer to the construct token, kill them. Stoneforge, hammer, it doesn't matter. It's 1,000,000 power. So we have 17/17 construct and a 6/6 germ. We can play the Sigarda's Aid here too to pump up the Nattle Cyst, but the game's over because we are dealing 23, 24, and GG's to the opponent, 24 damage. Awesome. So we have kind of come back. We're 4-2 now, and hoping to get that 5-2. We're already here. Love it. I love time travel. Cool. So we have seen Lurrus of the Dream Den from the opponent, which means if they're the Thoughtseize deck, we really don't want to mulligan, and this hand's totally reasonable anyway with an Esper Sentinel on the play. Okay, looks like the red-black X Ragavan decks. Yep, cast the Sigarda's Aid, get in there. If they block, we get to gain 2 life, deal 1 to them, kill their Dragon Rage Channeler. So I'm pretty happy if they block. This is what we call a good start. If we're a hammer, it would be much better, obviously, but we did get to do 1 damage to them. Now, if they kill the Esper Sentinel, they won't be able to pay the tax, so we will draw a card off of it, turning the Esper Sentinel into effectively a 3-for-1. I can count to 10 at least. Yep. So Unholy Heat, we get to draw a card. Pure Steel Paladin is not a bad one, but the reality is the next 2 turns are probably just going to be spent making a construct, and then getting a hammer. Because the reality is Pure Steel Paladin isn't going to draw a card for at least another turn, and so it's actually safer in our hand because they play more discard spells than removal spells, and we want to make sure we get as many cards out of each saga as we can because these Jund decks do grind really hard. So it's important that we maximize each card. Okay, Inquisition of Kozilek by Paladin. This is another spot where Lurrus would be excellent because this game's gonna go very long, but we will see. Starting off with a 3-for-1 for effectively 1 mana is definitely how you want to start against Jund. Okay, we'll make a construct. And it's a consideration of, do we make the construct? Do we try to go for the kill? I think it's too likely that they have some way to interact with an Inkmoth Nexus. So we do, I believe, go ahead and get the hammer here, though, anyway, to kind of force them to kill it. But there's also consideration for a Nihil Spellbomb or a Springleaf Drum for more mana. The issue is we have 4 more lands in our hand. So yeah, let's go ahead, put the hammer on the construct. Okay, cool. Yep, they have the heat, and yeah, let's play out the land. And play out the Concealed Courtyard because it's coming in untapped, and we want to make sure our land's coming untapped if they can. Okay, we're putting Lurrus in the hand, passing the turn back, presumably. Play land for turn, pass it back to us. Silent Clearing. Question is, are we cracking a Silent Clearing? Nah, we're just gonna suit it up. We can do both though. So we go ahead and play the Silent Clearing out. Get to bash them for 4, and we pass back the turn. They play Lurrus, makes sense to me. Play this Dragon Rage Chandler out of the yard with Lurrus, and play Ragavan. That's a pretty good turn. I'm gonna go ahead and crack this clearing. Not really what we want to see. Perfect, another land. Lands have been very feast or famine against the Jund deck. I think that's the 10th land we've seen, but that's why it's so important for this deck to have access to those canopy lands and things like that. Yeah, so we get to bash in. If they want to block, then we get to animate. And at this point, I think we need to get aggressive because I think the longer this game goes, the worse we're off. And it's a question of do you animate? And I think it's probably correct to animate. You get an additional point of damage out of it, and you gain an additional life. It's going to be close because they're starting to turn the corner for sure. If they draw another Unholy Heat, we're in bad shape. But they've already drawn 2, so could be worse. Okay, so they attack him with the Ragavan and the Lurrus. I choose not to block. They grab a Colossal Hammer and cast the hammer. This is definitely a game where I misplay, and we'll get to see that here in a bit. Yeah, so they play their land. I get to bash in. I play the second Inkmoth Nexus. And it's a question of do we move it to the Esper Sentinel to additionally tax them? In retrospect, I think no, just because I don't think we can afford to spend that mana. If it made Esper Sentinel into a 3-butt, so it could profitably block this Ragavan, it might be a different story, but it's not. Now, if they have a bolt, we lose both our... we wouldn't lose both our Esper Sentinel and the Construct because we can animate the Inkmoth Nexus or Nexi in response. Yeah, we have continued to draw more lands. It's land 11. And keep in mind, Saga was actually one of these spells that we got, the Colossus Hammer. So they get to put the Colossus Hammer on the Lurrus of the Dream Den. For whatever reason, I don't block Lurrus. I think it's fine to take one hit from Lurrus because blocking it doesn't do that much. I guess if we blocked with the Inkmoth, it would, but... Okay, trade off with the monkey. Land number 13. Luckily, we have all these lands that gain us life. Get in there with both creatures, which I think is a mistake actually, because now if they dash Ragavan, we can't block with the Esper Sentinel, so we hold it back or not. Running 6, that is painful for sure. Yeah, they clear the Esper Sentinel away. They go ahead and play the Dragon Rage Channeler and attack with the Lurrus. For whatever reason, I think I just take it here, which is kind of silly. They also played the Nile Spellbomb, so now they have the Howling Mine mode on Lurrus going as well. I don't know why I'm not blocking. For whatever reason, I'm thinking Lurrus has Trample, which, why not? Okay, Sagardazade is a little late. Play out the third Inkmoth Nexus. They bomb us. We animate, and it's a question of, is it worth it to animate another to gain the extra life? So we do go ahead and animate another one just to gain the extra life off this Construct hit. We do get to kill the Renin 6, which they totally can't rebuy with Lurrus next turn. And we kind of go from there. We do go ahead and play out the... No, we don't play out the Sagardazade. We just play another land. They then Thoughtseize the Sagardazade, which is fine, honestly. They see that we've got nothing going on. They attack with both. It's time to block with Inkmoth and hope for the best. And yeah, like if I just block the Lurrus here, I take 3, potentially. I'm very likely still very, very dead, but I'm not actually dead. And so yeah, it's one of those things. They rebuy the Ren. Or no, they cast it from their hand. They go ahead and plink us and lightning bolt us, and we are dead. Like I said, I should have been blocking Lurrus at least once, because that gains me, especially if it's at the beginning, it's going to gain me more life. The good news is we have these good sideboard cards, the Endings and the Sanctifiers for sure, as well as potentially some additional cards. Yep, cut the Ornithopters, the Gift, the Nile Spellbomb for those 6. It is also tempting to bring in this Sword of Fire Knights because it grinds so well, and Memnite super sucks, but we also need a critical mass of zeros, so we didn't have the sword in this game. And yeah, this hand's fine. We have a hammer in the Saga, we have a Sagardazade and a Paladin, so we have multiple ways to attach it. And it's a keepable 7 against the Thoughtseize Inquisition deck. And the reason we're playing the Memnite here is because if they do tap out and we rip Hammer off the top, then we can just straight up equip it to the Memnite and get in for 11. And that's one of the best ways to beat these Jund decks, right? Like if you can get a Hammer on a Memnite, they don't have a lot of answers to any hammered creature, which is reasonable. Okay, Inquisition, probably take the Paladin would be my guess. That's why I'm just putting it over closer to the graveyard for him, save him the trouble. Yeah, so Pure Steel Paladin in the yard. We draw a Memnite, play out the Saga and the Memnite. Renin 6, super gross. So that's one of the reasons it's tempting to leave in the Thopters, because at least they don't die to the Renin 6, but Memnite at least kills Memnite kills the Ragavan, which is pretty big game. We get to plink the Renin 6, so if they want to trade their Renin 6 for the second Memnite, I'm fine with that, because we get to start making constructs here, which admittedly they won't be the largest constructs, but we will get to grab a hammer as well off the Sagardazade. Yep, that's fine. Yep, so they go ahead and play a Mountain and a Pyrite Spellbomb and a Ragavan. Giver is not bad, but it's also not. It's a question of, are we making another construct? Or what are we doing here? And it's tough because we really want to make another construct, but the reality is we're not going to get a hammer onto one of our guys because of this Pyrite Spellbomb. Getting an extra body out of the Saga is incredibly relevant. Now it's a question of, what are we grabbing with the Saga? We can very reasonably grab a drum or one of the equipment. And so I really, yes, perfect. Okay, so they go ahead and heat one of the constructs. This was a mistake. So now, like, I don't know what the thought process there was. And it's, yeah, I considered something else, but then it was, okay, yeah, they can't kill my guy. Let's make him a 12/12. Little robot boy grew up real fast. So now they just have so few ways to actually kill this creature. Running 6 is not going to do it here. So they crack and then pick it back up. And we're just going to go ahead and nuke the Sagavan here. They knew about one of these prismatic endings, but not both. We get to nuke the monkey and then kill the Renin 6 with the construct. And we're going to need to get through this the spell bomb anyway, so we're probably going to play out this Giver of Runes. So we're using our mana. Because we don't want to prismatic ending the spell bomb, because they can just crack it in response and then rebuy it later with Lurrus. Whereas if we manage to hit a drum or something later in the game, then we can actually prismatic ending for 3 different colors and hit a Lurrus with it. So I'm considering, oh, do we play the Giver? Do we not? I think we do, just to force them to crack the spell. Yep. So that's exactly what happens. They have Saga going, but we have a 12/12, and that's pretty good. So it's back to our turn. They did nothing on theirs. We drew a Plains for turn. So it's tempting to play the Plains. The life doesn't really matter that much here. So we go ahead and crack. In case we draw like an Urza Saga, we'd rather play that out. Okay, that's a good one. Well, they haven't had a removal spell for the construct yet. That being said, yeah. So if they let the construct through, then we hammer. If they block it with one of their constructs, we don't need to, and we play this Giver to set up for a second hammer next turn. But well, they didn't block, so it's one of those things where if they do have like a Fatal Push or a Terminate or an Abrupt Decay there, we get super blown out, and we don't have to get blown out, so we just play the Giver. And they can't fetch anymore, or they die. They probably don't have another Pyrite Spellbomb for this Giver. Also, Giver is a lethal threat now because they did fetch. So we don't actually have to do anything, because as long as they don't play like 3 different bodies, we can just prismatic. And if they do play 3 different bodies and they're all the same color, we can pro the construct of whatever one color that is, and then prismatic ending the construct token. Note that we cannot give the construct pro, well, we could give the construct pro colorless. The hammer would fall off, but they would still take lethal damage. Okay, they're presenting a sizable defense. Alpine Moon, what are they naming? Probably Urza's Saga, because it's so good. And for whatever reason, Alpine Moon is asymmetrical. Like, why? Yeah, so like this is a pretty aggressive attack on their part. I don't like this attack. Maybe they think that's all they can do. Yeah, but we just prismatic ending one of these creatures, attack with both, and the game's over. Trying to think if there's a different way we can do it to not show the second prismatic, but it does not matter. And yeah, so we prismatic ending the bigger creature and attack with both lethal threats. So we got game 2. Let's see if we can finish 5-2 by winning this last game. I don't think we want to change anything. It's tempting to put this sword in. It's tough. So I think it's reasonable to trim 1 Giver for the Sophie. I do think if we're trimming Giver, then we probably don't want the Kaldra, but it's tough. Also, their deck literally can never beat Kaldra. So okay, we got Esper Sentinel, a way to equip a hammer and a hammer. Yeah, this is an easy keep. Anytime I have a solid hand against Jund, I always keep, because getting Thoughtseize when you're already on 6 or 5 is just so bad. All right, so they did mulligan to 6, I believe. Yeah, so they mulled to 6, which these Esper Sentinels feel even better. They decide to bin the Saga. That does put a second card type in there for them. They can sack the Bauble to get a third card type. But we're just going to keep it simple. Probably just going to play this Esper Sentinel. And so next turn we can actually just Sigardizade Colossus Hammer. If I had doubles of something else, it would be a consideration to lead with the Sigardizade. But since we don't have 2 hammers, it's not a huge concern, because if they Thoughtseize, they still break up the AB of hammer and Angelade. Inquisition, yep, pretty good. And my thinking is they probably take this Sigardizade. It's either the Sigardizade or the hammer, and it's not particular. It could also be Pure Steel Paladin, but that doesn't seem right. Okay, so they took the aid. Totally reasonable. Yep, can't block. You know, sometimes the Inquisition of Kozilek bug is better than the Thoughtseize bug. And so we're just going to do this. Make it real simple. I still think we were in a pretty good spot, even if we didn't hit that Cigar de Zay, but the fact that we did, it was just real dumb. I have definitely been on the other side of the Thoughtseize bug. But yeah, so now if they cast any spell, any non-creature, of course, we're going to draw a card. They don't have many cards in their entire deck that address the Esper Sentinel. If they had a second red source, they could double heat the guy, but that means we draw a card and they use 2 heats on it. And then if we had a white source, we get to Paladin and equip because we can animate the Inkmoth with itself. No, we would be short. In fact, we would need to play out the Sentinel. Yep, take 3. They don't have much of a choice, so yeah. Also, if we had a land, we just get to put a Sophie on the Esper Sentinel. Yep, might as well play the other Sentinel. This way, if they have a way to kill the Esper Sentinel, they kind of have to do it now, or we draw an additional card. Yep, actual factual Doomblade, dies to Doomblade, still good in 2021. Rad. And we're absolutely drawing a card because they do not have 11 spare mana. Put the Memnite in because it does attack. I think it was actually, it is potentially correct to just play the Shadow Spear here to equip it to the Sentinel, but now if they cast a spell, we can respond to it with the Shadow Spear, meaning that the Esper Sentinel gets 2 power before its trigger checks, and so they might not factor that in. EE for 1. I'm going to see if they pay, because if they pay, then they can't crack the EE. So there's no reason for me to put that in because we're drawing a card either way. And so if we draw a land, the game's over. Yep, crack the EE, totally reasonable. Yeah, so a land does it. Not quite yet, but they're down to 2 cards. We have a Stoneforge, Sophie, a Shadow Spear, this Pure Steel Paladin. So it's a question of how do we want to sequence out these last couple turns. Yeah, so I like the Pure Steel plus the Shadow Spear. Just getting the free card immediately is pretty good. And Saga is a very good draw, as always. Opponent goes to 4. And the Sword of Fire and Ice of lethal, of course. We have lethal power in play with the Shadow Spear equipped to either creature. And then we also have Stoneforge. Okay. Opponent is treading water. Yeah, so the game's over because we just get to aid plus equip the Sophie. Or get a hammer. Doesn't really matter. All roads. It is a question of do you want to play the Stoneforge here or just the Sophie? In retrospect, I think the Stoneforge is probably the better play because you can grab the hammer and just hold up the hammer while you just attack for 2 twice. I don't think my opponent has another removal spell, and getting the Sophie into play this turn means that we could play Stoneforge and equip the Sophie to it next turn. And that's the game. So we ended up starting 0-2. Absolutely some of it my fault. Keeping that hand was not great in the first game. All right, so we are back with the kind of the afterthoughts of the event. My thoughts are that the Hammertime shell is incredibly resilient, very powerful, and whatever angle you want to approach it with, I think is pretty reasonable. I like Giver more than Ingenious Smith because I have had just horrible luck with Ingenious Smith, and I don't like it. And so my gut says I don't want to play that card. That being said, Giver has been fine. So in terms of Lurrus or No-Lurrus, I don't think it's particularly close. I think you just played Lurrus. It's like one of the most powerful cards printed in Magic ever. It was banned in Vintage for a period of time for power level concerns. So, I mean, it seems in retrospect kind of silly not to play it. That being said, Nettle Cyst was very good. And if Lurrus got like the Banhammer or whatever, I would absolutely play at least one Nettle Cyst for sure. And Cauldron was very good in the spots where it's good. So against decks that literally can't kill it, I kind of like it. So the question is, like, what do you do? I think Sophie is very medium. So what if we tried something, pull it up? Okay, so I'm thinking something potentially like this. I hadn't thought about Dark Confidant in a long time until I saw some lists do well with it recently. So I could see just like Bob as that Giver, Ingenious Smith flex spot, because you have so, like, the fact that Tasha's Hideous Laughter basically one-hit KOs, you mean that Bob's going to be really good in the deck, right? You're not going to take much damage from it. I think your average CMC is like 0.6. Might be a little higher, but whatever. I do think Spellbomb's the best Graveyard Hate for this deck if you have the Black Splash. I could see trimming the Givers for the Dark Confidant. I don't know if I want full 4 Dark Confidant, but I can also see trimming the Steel Shaper's Gift for like a 4th Bob or something else. I don't hate that. I do like trimming the 1 Mishra's Bauble probably for a 20-second land, the Plains. I like having more lands. A lot of times I lose with this deck is when I don't hit my lands, and if you have extra lands, you can easily you can leverage that to put Lurrus into your hand. In terms of sideboard, Thoughtseize, obviously insane. Prismatic Ending, insane. Lurrus, insane. The Drannith Magistrates I could take or leave. It depends on what I think I'm going to play, but it seems fine. This is the other card that I kind of like. Some people play Seal of Cleansing. I think that card, obviously, when it's good, is insane. But Cathar Commando, it has flash, so you can flash it out. Even with Lurrus in play, you can flash it out during your turn if you need to respond to something. And so it's a 3-mana disenchant that you can break it up. But the fact that it's a solid body with the disenchant on it tells me it's pretty good, because I know when I bring in a bunch of Seal of Cleansing effects, I tend to not be able to actually kind of close out and kill my opponent. So that might be a consideration. But yeah, so in terms of Dark Confidant, I really like this card in this deck specifically. And I could totally see playing one more. Steel Shaper's Gift has always been kind of the most medium card to me, and I see lists running like 4, and I'm just like, this is too much. So do I think you should not play Lurrus as long as Lurrus is legal? No, play Lurrus in any deck that you can, basically, because the card's just so dumb. I might try like 4 Bobs right off the bat just to try it and then kind of go from there. But I mean, deck's sweet. Dark Confidant seems sweet. You have 4 clearings, so you have 8 plus the 3 Springleaf Drums. So you could also go like the 4th drum instead of the extra Plains. That doesn't seem completely unreasonable, especially since having drum also means that you have the turn 1 Saga, turn 2 start making constructs plan. So yeah, maybe I try that. Yeah, so that way you actually have 12 black sources, and you can tutor up black sources with Saga too. I don't know. 21, 22 lanes is kind of where I'm at, and yeah, I'll try 4 Bobs. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how I punted, because I'm sure I punted even more than I said in the matchup. But yeah, hope y'all enjoyed. Take care. Bye.